Welcome to Financial Clarity, the podcast dedicated to helping service-based small business owners achieve financial success. Join us as we demystify financial concepts, get practical tips from seasoned entrepreneurs, and discover strategies to increase profit and value. Hannah Smolinski here. I'm the host of the Financial Clarity podcast. And if you've only listened to me here on the podcast platforms, you might not know that I also have a YouTube channel. The YouTube channel is how I met today's guest, so you will hear all about that in just a little bit. But before I introduce today's guest, I have a message from our sponsor, my company, Clara CFO Group. Clara CFO is dedicated to providing financial clarity and profit-maximizing solutions to small businesses. The team at Clara CFO are seasoned accounting professionals with a heart for small business. We help growth-minded entrepreneurs thrive through fractional CFO services and financial education. To learn more about Clara CFO Group and how we can help your business, visit claracfo.com or just feel free to reach out to me directly on LinkedIn. Be happy to connect with you there. So I'd like to introduce you to today's guest, Jamie Trull. Hi, Jamie.
Hi.
Jamie Trull is a financial literacy coach and a profit strategist who helps business owners understand the finance side of their business so that they can make and keep more money. Very, very important. Prior to becoming an online entrepreneur, Jamie spent her career rising in the ranks of financial leadership in the Coca-Cola system. After leaving corporate world in search of a more balanced and fulfilling life, Jamie leveraged her background as a CPA to serve women-owned businesses as a virtual CFO. Recognizing that there was a lack of truly accessible, understandable financial education resources for small business owners, Jamie pivoted her business towards creating resources to help fill that gap. Today, Jamie has helped thousands of business owners feel more confident about their financials through her resources and programs. Jamie, thank you so much for being here.
Hey, Hannah. I'm so excited to be here.
I love it that we are YouTube friends first, and then we've become regular friends.
Yep, exactly.
We met on YouTube. We were trying to think about it, and we're like, "Yep, that's how it happened."
Yeah, I can't remember. I think I reached out to you because we were both doing a lot of content around all of the COVID, relief programs. And we were two of the only women out there doing it, at least at the time.
Yes.
And I really liked your style. You reminded me a lot of myself. And it turns out we have a very similar background too. So it was just perfect. It was synchronicity.
Yes, it was meant to be. It was meant to be that we would meet in the world. And it just so happened that we had a very similar heart and passion at that point in time to make sure that people got the right information. And then we bonded over that because we were like, oh, there's a lot of people who don't have that mission.
Yes. That is absolutely true.
Yes. Well, I would love for you to just give us a little bit more about your background. So we heard a little bit about your time at Coca-Cola, but tell us how you got to the point of owning your own business.
Yeah. I mean, I think it was like so many people, there wasn't a master plan involved. I would love to say that I had it all planned out and I knew what I was going to be doing or where this world would take me. I had no idea. And so I always laugh at like the me from, 7 years ago, who had no idea that I would be an online entrepreneur, like didn't even know what that was. I mean, it really makes me laugh having a YouTube channel, all of that is really nothing that I had, written in the stars. Like I had no idea. And I just kind of started like most people do, I left my corporate job at a time when we were doing a big inversion. So, they were moving the headquarters of my bottling company to Europe. So it was either move to Europe or, find another job or, figure it out. And so we were also moving to Tennessee at the time, back home for me. And I kind of figured I gotta find a way to contribute to my family. And I always kind of had a little bit of bug about entrepreneurship, mostly because I am not the best with authority. I kind of wanted to build my own thing, right? Build my own dream. And I finally felt, even though I'm pretty risk averse by nature, I mean, I'm an accountant, I'm a CPA like you, right? We're pretty risk averse, but I think at a certain point, it just finally was time. I just kind of knew my kids were young. I didn't want to go back into an office. And I just decided, you know what, I'm going to start something. And what I know is accounting, right? I know accounting, I know, finances, I know profitability because that's a lot of the roles that I would play at, Coca-Cola Enterprises. And so I just kind of started helping small business owners, mostly people that I knew that just needed help. And it kind of grew from there. And I realized my passion was less so in kind of the bookkeeping and taxes piece and more so in that strategy piece, like the virtual CFO piece, where we're really helping businesses figure out how to manage their cash, how to grow their profit, how to pay themselves more. I was really passionate about seeing, businesses that were really strapped for cash, how much I could help them just by implementing some, various tweaks and some processes and some tracking and things like that. And so that was really where it started.
Yeah. Did you know, were you able to sell that right off the bat? Were you
Yeah.
able to sell that service? Because I wasn't. I couldn't do it. I
Isn't it
didn't know
funny?
how.
I think maybe I could have had I tried, but I was afraid to try. So what I did was I added it as like a back end, right? So I would get people in who were like, "Oh, I just need a consult," or maybe they need bookkeeping, which I should never have been doing people's bookkeeping.
Same.
Like, it's just why in the world? I don't like it. And people are always surprised to find out I don't like doing bookkeeping and I don't like doing taxes, but I don't. That's not, I love forecasts. That's my love language. Like, give me a forecast. Let me play
Totally.
around with it. Let me, do some magic with some numbers. Give me some profit margins, but I don't want to be doing the compliance work.
Right.
But I thought that that's what everybody needed. And then I would sell them an upsell to my CFO services, which I think, oh my gosh, Hannah, I think the first time I upsold it, I upsold my CFO services for like $150 a month. And I look back and I'm like, what in the world was I doing? Like,
Right.
because I didn't know what it was worth at the time.
Right. Yeah.
And so I think it takes for everybody, right? Like anytime you're running a business and you're trying to figure out, like, pricing is hard. And I've been through that. Now I teach pricing, which is funny because, oh my gosh, have I been there in a place where I had completely unsustainable pricing. And so then it took a while to figure out, okay, what is my offer? I had to really think about, how do I package this? How do I sell just what I'm really good at? And how do I make a process out of it? Because I think that is something that is difficult for a lot of people, because you need to have some sort of process that you go through with customers, even though customers are going to have slightly different things that they need more help on. I really had to work hard to figure out, okay, what's the process I take everybody through and how can I do that efficiently? Which is not the easiest thing.
Definitely not. And that's where a lot of people get stuck. So I think it's good to remember that if you're feeling that way, this is very common.
Absolutely.
And it is a very common part of building a service-based business where you're trying to figure out, what's that standardized thing that I can sell over and over? How do I talk about it? How do I get people to perceive the value that it really is? I did the same thing, like pricing, and your story is so similar to mine. And the more I hear, I mean, we already knew that we had a lot in common. And then the more I hear, I'm like, yeah, we are doppelgangers, like in every single sense. I love it. But I like that you figured it out, and you were starting to figure out what that cadence was. So you ended up building your virtual CFO company to where, I mean, how many clients did you have when you were kind of maxed out?
I maxed out at 10. And that was the thing. Because I was also doing all the other things. Right. And that was one of the things that when I would sit down and do my own forecasting, I'm like, oh, I could take 20 clients. But I made a lot of mistakes along the line, which was I did it, where I took on a lot of clients at once. And we all know the beginning is the most intensive part.
Right.
And that really kind of burned me out, where I was trying to keep up with even just 10 clients. I was maxed out. I mean, I was working more than I had been working even at my corporate job and making less than half of what I had been making. And so that was a really tough realization for me, which was like, man, I did this for flexibility and I don't have that at all. I feel like I'm running myself into the ground, and I still have to pay for all my expenses and, and all of that. And so I think that was really the moment where I said, okay, I have to change something. And I went through, all the different options of what could I change in this environment, right? Like, what are the ways that I could change this business model? Obviously, charging more is one of the options, right? Getting more efficient, of course, too. So that was something I worked on first, was like, how do I do this more efficiently? So I tried that and gained some efficiencies there, but I still had issues with my pricing. But the problem I had with going with pricing increases is the people that I really like to serve are much smaller businesses. So I serve probably smaller than what yours usually are, Hannah. I'm usually in the like 50,000 revenue to 500,000, right?
Okay.
So it's
Yeah.
usually honestly before they can really afford a virtual CFO to
Right.
come in even fractionally and do that work. After that point, right? Then I absolutely recommend somebody has somebody that they can, they can come into their business and really help them. But I realized that people in that realm, I almost wouldn't recommend them paying,
Yeah.
a couple grand a month for me because that was such a huge part of their revenue. And I couldn't, like the ROI just wouldn't be there.
Right.
And so for me to serve that group of people, I had to figure out like, well, what can I give them? Right?
Right.
How can I do this and still make it make sense for me financially as well and run a sustainable business? So that's kind of where the education piece came up. And I had started playing with it as a way to drive people into my service-based business.
Mm-hmm.
And it worked so well that I had a huge like waiting list, but I'm like, I can't get to this amount of people in 5 or 10 years. Like there's just no way.
Yeah.
And so I had to kind of make that decision of, okay, if I want to serve this group of people, if I don't want to be burned out, if I want to make, a sustainable income for my family, education might be the place that I go. And I had no idea how much I would love it. Like I absolutely loved, I started going live on social media, which terrified me at first. And now
Yeah.
it's one of my favorite things to do is video content because I think it's so important to do that. And I really just connected with that ability to connect with others.
Mm-hmm. That I think that's a really, really interesting part of your story is where you were really understanding your customer and your
Mhm.
ideal client.
Yeah.
And it takes a lot of integrity too to say, I don't think you should be paying this much for my
Yeah.
service.
And
Now,
people would like they
yeah.
were offering me their money and I
Hmm.
couldn't, I was like, I can't in good conscience take this money from you in the situation that you're in. But
Right.
here's what you can do. And then I want you to come back to me when you're
Yes.
ready, right? Like that was the conversation I was having with people. But I realized the people I really wanted to serve were those people that were kind of stuck in this place. Like there's a scaling place where
Hmm.
I feel like business owners get stuck. It's oftentimes when it's going from just them to other employees,
Yeah.
but they have a really hard time getting over that hump.
Yeah.
And that's where I really like to be there, which is like, okay, now it's time to scale. You've started this, you've grown it, you've gotten it to a point by yourself, but now we need to really get those finances dialed in so that you can get to that next level.
Yeah. It's a huge, I mean, it's a critical part. I
Yeah.
think if financial strategy starts, the need for financial strategy starts way before you can afford a CFO,
Right.
typically.
Exactly.
So
Exactly.
I understand that. And so I think that's one of the brilliant things about what you're offering now is it's kind of that really great bridge between maybe like to get you to the place where you have a lot of financial concepts in place. You can understand your financials. You have some really amazing courses to kind of get people in like just the financial basics and then kind of taking it a little bit to the next level.
Yeah.
So I love that you're providing that because it doesn't have the investment of a monthly month in, month out CFO ongoing retainer. But they can start to get that information and get a good foundation to then take the next level in the business.
And I think it prepares people too for those eventual relationships with a CFO and
Yes.
with an accountant to be able to speak that same language. I think a lot of times people are under the impression that they should just outsource all of this stuff because they don't
Hmm.
have the expertise. But you don't need to know all the things, right? You don't need to go get your CPA license or anything like that. But there are some things you do want to know because no one cares about or knows about your business as much as you do. So you don't want to outsource all the financial decisions in your business to someone else who doesn't also have a stake in the game, right? The way that you do. So it's
Yeah.
so important to be able to kind of learn the language and be able to have those conversations. And then when you do hire somebody, it's going to be so much more effective because you've already got that baseline. You understand what they're talking about and you can kind of come into it as peers rather than just, kind of fully outsourcing everything and just giving it over and saying, handle it for me.
Yeah. And a couple points on that. I mean, first of all, you don't want to be just like talked at by your CFO, your CPA, or
No.
whoever. Like you want to be part of the conversation. And I
Yes.
think you also, actually, Amalia Martino, who came on to the podcast a couple weeks ago, she had said that she took like kind of this financial basics for entrepreneurs class. And it was because of her understanding there, she felt more comfortable hiring a CFO because she
Yep.
could be more aware also if people were kind of BSing her almost,
Mhm.
like it's like she felt more comfortable hiring the position because she was more aware of exactly where she needed the help.
Yeah.
And then she knew what to hire for in more of a direct way.
And I think that that is something a lot of people don't realize until they maybe have a bad experience, right? That
Right.
just having letters behind your name doesn't mean that they're necessarily a good fit for you. It doesn't mean that they, know all the things that they're even supposed to know. And I know, not to, harp on our profession, but it is so varied, right? People have
Yes.
such varied experiences that lead to whether they, just like anything else, right? It doesn't guarantee you're going to get somebody who's qualified just because they have a designation. And in some cases, there are people who don't have designations that are way more qualified in some
Yes.
instances, right? So I think that's something that you learn oftentimes, unfortunately, through not asking all the questions because you don't know what to ask when you're finding a service provider. You don't really know, like, okay, how do I ferret out whether this person is telling me the right things? And I think that's where that education piece is so important because I don't ever, I'm I'm on YouTube, but I don't ever purport, I'm not anybody's CPA, right? And I don't want people
Yeah.
taking advice just directly from me, but I want them to be informed enough when they have those conversations that they can determine if something sounds off, right? Or
Yes.
they can kind of read that themselves to say, that's not what I remember hearing. And that doesn't sound correct, rather than just kind of taking somebody's word for it. I think really empowering ourselves to have some baseline in that can really serve ourselves and our business.
Absolutely. I mean, you and I have done many a conversation and video about the employee retention tax credit.
Hmm.
And there's been just enormous amounts of misinformation about that credit in particular, and people getting targeted, marketed for these things. And you have created an amazing spreadsheet as part of like your educational resources. You created this amazing spreadsheet that helps people not necessarily go and like know exactly, they're not necessarily filing their tax return with a spreadsheet, but what they're doing is you're giving them the information they need to put in so that they can have a really solid idea of what their potential tax credit could be. So they could go and take it to their CPA and then have the conversation of like, why do it? Why not do it? They can go through all of the kind of maybe the pros and cons of maybe going after that money, bring it to them. But they like that empowerment through a little bit of understanding is just so helpful. And then small business owners, we don't have the time to research everything on our own. So, like, these resources are just kind of giving that little leg up that they wouldn't have otherwise.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that's really the goal. And I think the interesting thing with a lot of this, but talking about the ERC in general, right, is you have both sides. This prepares you in both circumstances because I have heard stories. Obviously, we have our ERC mills who are like super aggressive, telling everybody who's anybody who has ever had a business, they qualify for this and they can get them $26,000 per employee. And they're just really pushing hard. So it prepares them for the conversation to really say, okay, I'm not seeing that I actually qualify for this, and having some background for that challenge and seeing what they say. But also there are people on the other side that have their accountants who, especially in the past, like last year, a lot of them were still under the impression they couldn't get it if they had, PPP or something like that.
Right.
Right. And so there was some false information on that side as well, where people who really did qualify were being told by their professionals that they didn't. And that's why just
Yes.
empowering yourself with knowledge, even if it just means watching free videos, or maybe joining a course or getting some resources to help, but having some background in it can really be helpful to then take and have more meaningful conversations with the experts on the subject, right?
Absolutely. I'm going to shift us a little bit into talking about your shift into your education business model.
Mhm.
So you decided, started to see these like inklings of like, oh, this is maybe something that's interesting to me. I like teaching people. I have a lot of people that want to learn from me. What was the like practical steps of doing that transition? Because that's like huge. And did you know that you were making a very, very conscious decision to move into away from services into education?
So I think I had hoped that it was going to work, but of course, again, like the risk averse nature, I'm like, I got to see it work. And the problem that I had was, creating my very first course, which of course I go and I had to do the big course first, which is just very much me, right? Rather than like starting and going for low hanging fruit, I was like, nope, I'm going to make the whole basically like how to be a virtual CFO course, which is my financial fitness formula to be your own CFO, right? And so I start making this. Of course, I have I'm learning editing, I'm learning recording, I'm learning all kinds of things, all at the same time that I'm creating this thing, while also trying to hold this client load that was overwhelming at the time.
Wow.
So that was really difficult. And I realized pretty quickly, okay, if I'm going to do this, I don't know that I can keep all of these clients. So what I decided pretty early on in that was I'm going to do a pre-sale. And I just said, it was December, I remember, of 2019 when I was doing this. So pre-COVID, right? PC, whatever, BC.
Yeah.
And had no idea what was coming down the line. But I'm like, okay, I'm creating this thing. But before I put it out in the world, like before I put all this time into actually creating it, I need to make sure people are going to buy it.
Right.
And that's something I absolutely recommend to anybody going through this is, I wasn't about to let go of a whole bunch of my clients and then realize this wasn't for me. That was my big fear, right? So how was I going to find time? So I made like a little sales page, right? And I figured out how to do that. And I wrote what it was going to be. And I sent it out and I gave a discount to anybody who wanted to be part of my like founding members and sold $44,000 of a course that did not exist yet.
Amazing. Okay.
With only a sales page and nothing else.
Who did you market to? Was it the people who were on your waiting list, or like how did you get the word out?
So I had been gathering an email list for about 6 months before that. So I started my email list in July of 2019 through my Facebook group. So my Financial Literacy for Women Business Owners group. I was growing my email list through that, offering freebies, things like that. I kind of learned how to do that to get them on my list intentionally, first to sell my services to. But then as I started getting into thinking about course creation, I realized that there was another avenue here. So I had that built-in audience of a couple thousand people on it at that time.
I was going to ask, maybe like, was that on your email list or a Facebook group? Curious, like, okay.
Yeah, it was mostly a launch to my email list and the Facebook group as well. But it was probably about 3,000 maybe people, 2,500, something like that.
That's a really good size list for being a service provider that could hold basically 10 clients at a time.
Right. Exactly. Exactly. And that's part of why I could only do 10 clients, because I was also doing all of this education stuff that I just loved. I started going live. I was live every single week for free doing trainings and people showed up. And so I just kept doing it.
Yeah.
And now I will say in today's world, would I do that? Would I start a Facebook group first? Probably not, because it has changed. It worked really well in 2019, 2023. I really love YouTube because of its longevity.
Right.
I make content and it lives a lot longer than the 24 to 48 hours that it'll live on social media. So I have leaned more into that now. But it did allow me to grow that business to the point where I could pre-launch this. And so I sold to those people. I realized, okay, this is going to happen. And I ended up tapering off all of my clients except for one that I loved. We all have like our pet clients that were like, I would do this for free for you because I love you so much.
Yes.
And so I kept one client. And it gave me
you loved all your clients, Jamie.
I love all my clients. I love all my clients. But I love that one the most.
It was probably easier to say goodbye to some than others, probably.
Yes. I think that would be true for everybody. And it was hard. Some of them we had already planned. I'd been doing that where it was more of an intensive rather than supposed to be ongoing.
Yeah.
So it was an intensive with the opportunity to go ongoing. And I just said, okay, at the end of the intensive, like we're going to be done. So it wasn't like ending contracts necessarily with people.
Right. That makes sense.
And I had referrals for the, people to make sure that they had the help that they needed. And so I started making it. And so the course I made week to week without anybody knowing, because I was releasing it one module at a time. And so I literally was making and editing and finishing up the course each and every single week that I was putting it out.
Wow. No pressure.
I know, again, totally not like me. And I don't recommend it, but I also kind of do because it allowed me to incorporate feedback and changes into things. Now I like to get these things done quite a bit ahead of time. Right. So we're not in that situation. But I think in the beginning, we sometimes want it to be perfect. And I had to let go of it being perfect and just take action. And I think that's one of the best. I know we talked about, like what's some of the best business advice you've gotten. And for me, it was really around just start doing and don't wait till it's perfect, because it's never going to be perfect. Right. Like just
Yeah,
start.
especially, I mean, anything like creative, I think that especially, or anything, I mean, we could say maybe that accounting content is not the most creative in the world, but it still takes creative energy to put it
oh,
out.
absolutely.
And putting together, like formulating even how you're going to talk about something definitely
Mhm.
takes work. Have you read the book? I think it's Seth Godin about shipping creative work.
No.
Gosh, I forget the title of it. I'll find the title and put it in the show notes. But it's about just like that concept of like shipping creative, like getting it out is
Hmm.
like the most important, because so many times like we just kind of hold on to it, or the idea we are like churn in this kind of idea that there is some kind of perfection.
Yep.
And it's like, what is perfection really going to look like? And your idea of perfection might look like perfection to somebody else. So,
Yeah. And I think it's iterative, right? Like for
mhm.
me, I've really realized that for me, I'm never going to be able to perfectly conceptualize something the way that I want it until I do the thing.
Right.
And then can make it better over
Yeah.
time. I can see like, oh, I want to improve this, this, and this. But if we just keep it in our head and it doesn't go anywhere, then it's just going to sit there. It's just going to sit
Right.
there until someday you think it's, ready, which you never will feel like it's ready. You'll never feel like it's fully fleshed out. It only happens over time. And I would say that with my business, that was that was one thing that made me uncomfortable, is like, I don't have this fully fleshed out, but I did it
Mhm.
anyway. And were there some things that went wrong? Absolutely. Were there things that I went back and changed because I didn't like how I did them? Absolutely. But I did it. I put it out there
Right.
for the world to see. I allowed that vulnerability, right? I allowed it to not be perfect, but to be really good and
Yeah.
helpful, because it's less about us and it's more about the people we're serving. And so I think
Mhm.
like reframing it that way was really helpful for me to be like, this isn't about how I look in this shot, right? Or having the best camera or having the best whatever.
Mhm.
This is about being able to have something that helps somebody else, right? And what they get
Yeah.
out of it. Um, so that definitely it was definitely a transition though. It was definitely a
Yeah.
transition from, one stage to the next stage. And I did kind of dive all in within 6 months. I had fully transitioned everything over. And then COVID hit.
Oh my gosh. So what's the timing of that? When did you transition, and when did you just come down to your like one client?
Yeah.
What was
So
that?
so December was when I pre-sold. In
Okay.
January, I was down to one client. I was building the program. I sold the program, more officially then.
Right.
And then in February and March and April, I was delivering it. So the beginning of April, we finished the course. I had delivered my first course. I had also, by that point, I think I just had that one client left then, because I had gotten rid of most of them between January and February. And and then I was like, I had literally just ordered a whole bunch of stuff because I'm like, oh, I have time now. I'm going to go do some projects around the house. I'd ordered organizational stuff. I was going to organize like my closet. That was cute. I still have all of that, by the way, that has not been touched. Because then, like the week after, it was like, oh, the CARES Act and what's going on and PPP loans and oh my gosh. And I do think like I'm actually very, very thankful. And I can get like a little bit kind of choked up when I talk about this, but I'm very thankful that I had made that switch, because
Yeah.
at the time that I did, it allowed me to really have time to dig in, because I didn't have clients to serve like all of these other CPAs and accountants did. All of my time could be spent researching these new laws, figuring
Yeah.
out like how to teach people about them, going live, like all of that. And I just kind of switched that because, my regular content wasn't working so great. People didn't want to hear about how to have a more profitable business when their business was shut down. Like that's not super helpful right now. Thanks, Jamie.
Right.
Like, how do I stay afloat? And so I think it was like, okay, well, that's where we're going to go with this. And it really, I mean, we both saw the huge bump in followers. I mean, that's when I started the YouTube channel, was April of 2020.
Okay.
Um, and just so quickly, I mean, it grew within a month. It was like monetized. I mean, it was insane.
Yeah.
Right.
Mhm.
And so I really am thankful though for that ability. And that's one of the great things about a business model like this, is that it allowed me to be able to serve the many and
Mhm.
not just the one. And I think we need both, right? Like
Yeah.
we really need both. We need people who can serve the many, and then also people who
Yes.
can be there to serve, one to one in a more like in a deeper way. Right. So
Yeah.
I kind of wanted to partner with those people a little bit where, okay, I'll do the overall education and then they can do the hand holding.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, and that was such a huge time commitment to be able to do the research on that stuff. And I think that's why people were going to YouTube, because they were like, "Oh, there's new rules." Well, it's a 40-page document. How can I figure out what this is in 15 minutes? And then it was
Yeah.
like, well, actually, Jamie Trull on on YouTube is, and
Well,
Hannah Smolinski on YouTube
right,
is.
exactly. And
You
I
know.
felt like in a unique place because I mean we have similar backgrounds, but like I was associate director of financial reporting and technical accounting. A
Mm,
large part of my job, right, was reading technical pronouncements,
mhm.
understanding them, making them make sense, helping like our countries that we had that were under us to implement changes. We even did a whole switch over. And other people will not understand the ridiculousness of this, but you will, Hannah. I was in charge of the switch from US GAAP to IFRS. That was my project
Wow.
during the merger. I managed like 20 people in this. And so I had experience reading this type of language
Mhm.
and figuring out what the heck it means and how to implement it. And so
Yeah.
that was really, I think, what I leaned into a little bit more is that background in technical accounting to say, okay, I can read this. Like I can read these things and figure out. And we did a lot of talking then too, because we
Yeah.
would be comparing notes around, well, what do you think it means? And what like, and there was a lot of conversations during that time period. And I loved being able to kind of partner up with people who were also really trying to serve the people that they wanted to help in that time period. But it
Mhm.
really, it was, I mean, it's, I still feel like I get really emotional when I think about that time period.
Yeah. I do too. I mean, it was a crazy, crazy wild ride during
Hmm.
those months. And honestly, like I was going through a divorce at the time too.
Hmm.
And it was like I was still serving my 10 plus clients and then trying to also like post YouTube videos. And, I mean, I didn't have any social life because, there wasn't anything to do. But it was like, it would be okay, bedtime for my kiddo. And then it would be like, okay, let's go research whatever has happened. Or like Friday night, they would always post like a interim final
Always
rule
Friday night.
on
We
a
talked about
Friday.
that.
And then we would text each other and be like, okay, I got my glass of wine. I'm going to go read this
It would
technical
ruin
accounting.
like my Bachelor, Game of Thrones watching or whatever I was
Yes.
watching that I can't remember. But I was like, every Friday night, I got my glass of wine and this happens. Now we have the COVID, the PPP application form. And I'm like, oh,
Yes. It was definitely like a side gig,
yeah,
like just understanding all of that stuff and spending time on it. So, well, I appreciate all the work you did on there because I know you were able to get into more of the technical nitty-gritty than even I was. And it was definitely nice to have somebody else to talk about that kind of stuff with during that time. So, and your
absolutely.
videos were hugely helpful to so many people. And I think I wish in some way that we could have quantified like how many people were able to get PPP loans because of the information that we shared.
Oh,
Like,
I'm sure it's tens of thousands, honestly. Like I
yeah,
know for a fact. I mean, just even seeing and I do feel like sometimes people reach out and tell you. But if anybody's listening to this and Hannah or I helped you at all during that time, always reach out. We love to
we
hear
would
your
love to
stories.
know.
Like those are my favorite stories to hear. And so I feel like I did have a lot of that at one point where people were reaching out quite a bit about things, but we love to hear because it really like we sit and talk to a camera all day.
Yeah,
Right? Like we can't see anybody. We can't like officially interact with anybody. And so it's really nice to know we think we're helping. We think, what we're doing is useful. But it does help to hear from real people about their experiences for sure.
absolutely. And you get that feedback when you're in a one-on-one situation, but when
Hmm.
you're in this one-to-many, you don't necessarily get as
Yep.
much of that. I mean, you might get the few YouTube comments here and there, but you're not necessarily getting that same level.
And sometimes the YouTube comments, I mean, yeah, post nice comments, y'all. Because there are some people on YouTube that I'm like, man, like what? what happened to you?
Yeah. Why why do you feel the need to be so
Why?
mean?
Yeah. Why?
We're nice people. Um, so I think like in this kind of new transition of your, because you started with that, you did PPP stuff, you've helped with the RTC, you've got a couple courses that you do, but you're not stopping there. You're continuing on this education track. Um, what do you think has been an interesting financial challenge or a challenge of this business model
Mhm.
versus just your one-to-one CFO services?
Well, I think this is definitely one of the cases where it's like the grass is always greener, right? So I had all these dreams of like, and you hear about, oh, this like passive income. There is no such thing as passive income.
Yep.
Unless, I mean, okay, maybe like regular investment type income, but they're really in this world, like there's so few things that truly are passive in nature. They're usually going to require some work. So there is a lot of work behind the scenes. Yes, I create courses one time and sell them over and over, but it takes a lot of work to find new people all the time to sell those to, right?
Yeah.
So we're constantly trying to get new people into our sphere to find out about us. That takes effort. It was funny because my whole reason for not, the additional reason, right, above and beyond this is the people I want to serve. I also looked at, okay, well, what if I had an agency model,
Yeah.
right, like you
Mhm.
have? And I
Mhm.
was like, oh, I don't want to manage people. Like, I just don't
Ah,
want to manage people. And it's hilarious because now I have a
how
team. And
I was like, "How many people are in your team,
I
Jamie?"
know, exactly. And so it's like, it's kind of funny how that happens.
Yeah.
So it requires, I mean, it's not like it's just me creating something and then going to the beach, 6 months of the year, which I think sometimes when we see this, that's what we imagine, or that's what we're even told sometimes that this looks like. It doesn't look like that, right?
Mm.
It looks like, yes, I did go on vacation and yes, I did make sales while I was gone. That was amazing. I do have a team. I have processes that we have refined over time to be able to do that. Um, but it still requires a heck of a lot of work. So I think that's
Yeah.
something, and it is less because I don't sell anything that is monthly recurring revenue, which is something we're looking at, but we've kind of stayed away from it thus far.
Mhm.
Um, it's We don't know how much we're going to make any given month. And that for me, we have a general baseline, between all the different things that we sell, what we typically should see. And then during certain launches, we expect to, we have an idea of what we expect to see there. But overall, I mean, none of that is guaranteed, right?
Yeah.
And so that can, for a person like me who really likes to have a handle on cash flow, that's one thing I miss actually about having those one-to-one clients, especially clients that you have on a recurring basis, is you have that kind of baseline. You have that, like, okay, this amount is what I know that I'll make. And that makes it a lot easier to make decisions around hiring and costs and what you want to invest in.
Yeah.
So I still, at times struggle with that because I'm a huge forecaster, but it's like, if something happens and Facebook changes its algorithm, like we could
Right.
tank, right? Depending. So
Right.
we really are trying to make sure we don't put all of our eggs in one basket, which was not at the case at the beginning of my business. It was very Facebook heavy. Now we have our tentacles in different places because we have to, because we don't want to, be in that spot where one change of something can really impact our business. So,
Yeah. Do you feel like because you have to rely on some of these social platforms, do you feel like that you're out of control of your revenue to some extent?
to some extent, yes.
Mhm.
And I think like the plus side is we always have prioritized building our email list. And that's something that
Yes.
I definitely recommend for people is if you're going to go this route where you're playing the volume game, which is what I do, right? I have to have, pretty much, hundreds to thousands of customers a year to sustain my business.
Mhm.
And so that means we constantly need to be getting new people in to be able to serve. And we don't want to have to rely on just, being like an Instagram influencer. Like I don't have that many Instagram followers, but I have a big email list.
Right.
And I would rather have a big email list
Oh,
than
yeah.
100,000 Instagram followers, right?
Yes.
So for me, that's what it's been about, is making sure to get people, to offer them something, to get them into my sphere where it's easier to contact them. There are still issues with that though, right? Like figuring out like, oh no, it's showing up in promotions or it's going to somebody's spam, or, there's still visibility issues even when you have that, but it makes it easier. We at least have, we own that, right? Social media could go down tomorrow but we know we still own a client list that is ours. So that I think is the helpful piece of it. But yes, I mean, to grow that email list, we use social media. I mean,
Yeah.
you can't separate it, you
Yeah.
know?
It's definitely like tied hand in hand.
Mhm.
Um, what does financial success look like to you?
Oh my, I think I couldn't have answered this like 5 years ago. I don't think I had any
Mhm.
idea. And I think I've gone through phases, right? Like
Yeah.
my first phase was like, I don't know. I think the second phase was like these crazy pie in the sky goals because everybody had them. And I felt like you're supposed to, right? Like, oh, I want an 8-figure business because people are talking about that. And I think for me, and I think this is true for so many business owners, specifically women business owners, maybe men too. I don't know. I can't speak to them, but we're looking for freedom and choice, right? And so I think success for me is really having freedom in my life to be able to live and not have to be concerned or worried. I want to be able to make choices and like I don't need to buy a yacht, but I'd like to be able to go on vacation when I want to, right? And
Right.
not be concerned. So I think a lot of what we're driving for in this business, and part of why I do like the fact that this business is not fully dependent on my time, although it still is. Let's be honest, it's still I can't disappear forever. But I do have that ability um to tune out, right? To go take a vacation, to go do things that I want to do. And so I think getting more security around more processes around making sure that we continue to maintain the level of profit that we need in order to keep the company sustained and keep that freedom. I think that's the goal. And to continue to have it be less reliant on me. I think that's really what success looks like. Because I think I used to like say things like, oh, I want to retire at 45, right? I'm 40 now. And I don't like, let's be honest. What am I going to do? I
Yeah.
don't want to retire at 40. Like, I actually really enjoy what I do. Now,
Right.
when I was working, that sounded great, but I'm like, I really don't, I really like what I do. I just don't want to have to do it all the time.
Yeah.
Right. So I would love to set up systems that continued to generate recurring revenue for me, but I'm working 10 hours a week, maybe.
Yeah.
Right. And maybe that's for the rest of my life. I don't know, or for a long time. But that's kind of where I see success for me is just in that freedom that it's more of a feeling than it is a number. I think for a long
Yeah.
time I pressed myself to have a number because I'm a numbers person. And of course I have like my retirement goals and things like that, but overall I think it's a feeling more than anything else.
Yeah. And I think that takes internal work to know what
Mhm.
when that feels like do you allow yourself freedom when you
Yeah.
really can, and
Yes.
you don't just kind of get stuck on the hamster wheel of like go, 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 go all the time. Like when
Oh,
does it
yes.
feel like enough? When does it feel like you can actually go from 30 hours to 20 hours? When does it feel like, I don't need to be in control of every single decision here or there?
Yep.
So, that it's going to take probably practice to get to
Yeah.
that point too. But
I think it
I
takes
love that.
practice and some anxiety meds.
Yeah. Hey, we're totally for whatever helps.
Like real talk, that actually, that kind of
Yeah.
thing, it can help. I think I have always been a person that's like the moving target, right? Where it's like,
Mhm.
okay, here's the goalpost. Okay, and now I hit that. Well, now I just move instead of enjoying it, I just move the goalpost. And
We're an
I've done that.
Enneagram 3 anonymous over here.
Uh-huh. Yep, exactly. Right. Like you never take time to celebrate. You just
Right.
keep moving the goalposts. And I think, yes, that has been something I think having that knowledge actually about the Enneagram and my own
Helpful.
tendencies has been really helpful to be like, oh, I'm doing it again. Oh, here I go. Just like, plugging on into the next thing rather than just sitting back and enjoying what I've created. And this summer was probably the first time I'll say, like, I really was like, I'm going to take the time that I'm going to take. I'm not going to worry about what's going on. Like, I've got a team to handle things, but I'm gonna enjoy life a little bit. And I really was able to take a step back. And a lot of that is because of the amazing team that I have, but it's also a lot of mindset work because even when I could have done it, a lot of times I didn't.
Right.
And I got in trouble
Yeah.
with my team. There was a time period, and this happens to all, I think, well, most entrepreneurs. There was a time period that I would get in trouble with my team almost weekly because I would be messing with something that wasn't my job. Because I was so used to everything being my job when I started this, that when I hired a team, it was really hard to let go of some things, right? And I thought I was helping when I was really just kind of getting in the way. And so I think
Yes.
enough conversations with my COO, and I was like, okay, all right, I'm out. I will
Yes.
not even log in. I promise. And so I think that has been helpful for me to, they kind of put the guardrails on me, and now I can put them up. I can put up my own boundaries for myself. So sometimes we need a little help with that.
Yes. Yeah. And it's great to have a team that you have that transparency with, that they are able to speak to you in that way too, to be like, hey, no,
Yes.
we've got it. It's good.
Yep. My team
Um,
basically manages me.
eh, well, yes, because sometimes we need managing. Well, I know we're coming up on our time here, and I want to be respectful of your busy day. But I do have one last question. Before I ask it, I want to point people to your website, jamietrull.com. And
Mhm.
I will also say you've got great things coming down the
Yes.
pike as well. And we didn't get time to talk about them today, but maybe you can come on again and we can talk about it when that is all live. But
Sounds good.
who would you consider a mentor in your as your business has grown in this direction?
Oh my goodness. I mean, well, definitely a mentor of mine who's also become a friend is Amy Porterfield. So anybody who is interested, if you're curious about like the digital world or courses or anything like that, and that's not just for anybody who's in the financial world, but any world, she's a great person to follow.
Mhm.
Because I don't think that I would have even taken, we didn't get to that part in the story, but I don't know that I would have taken the leap into this change in business model had it not been for her and her programs. And so for me, she's been a real mentor of like how to do this and how to do this well. And I follow a lot of what she does too about team management. So, her team went down to a 4-day work week. So we did it, in the summers, we do a 4-day work week. And so we're trying a lot of the same things. I really focus on people now who are kind of the moving against the hustle mentality, right? And
Mhm.
showing you how to really grow a sustainable business that isn't just working all the time. And I have fallen victim to that hustle mentality in the past and following people in that realm. And it really just burned me out
Yeah.
and made me feel like when I took a break, I wasn't good enough. And so now I'm really conscious about following people that are doing it the way that I would want to do it. Right. So just because they have a business that you admire, if they're not running it the way that you would want to run a business, don't follow somebody like that. Right.
That's
Um,
good.
yeah.
Yeah. That's really good. Thank you, Jamie. I appreciate that. I feel like we could keep talking all day. But it's been really great talking to you. If somebody wants to connect with you, how can they connect with you?
Definitely just check jamietrull.com. That's a really good place. We have a contact form so you can submit questions if you have any over there, and you can see all the things that we have. And also if you want to join our financial literacy for women business owners Facebook group. It is for everybody, not just for women. So I needed to change the name. It's mostly women over there, but if you're comfortable with that, come on over.
Financial literacy for humans.
Yeah,
We
I
can
know,
change
financial
it.
literacy for everybody.
Yeah.
Um, so definitely, come join us on over there because we do have a 40,000, I think, strong
Nice.
Facebook group. So it's a really good community over there
It's
too.
very active too.
Mhm.
There's great questions in there and good answers that people post back. There's a lot of like bookkeepers and accountants in there too that help out in answering some questions and things.
Yeah.
So
And then
definitely.
obviously my YouTube channel.
Yes. Okay. Yeah. And
Of course.
of course. And it's at Jamie Trull, right? If
Yeah, it's
you
just my
search on
name.
YouTube, just Jamie Trull. And definitely check that out. And we'll make sure to put links to everything in the show notes for this episode as well. Jamie, thank you for chatting with me today.
I have loved being here, Hannah. I always love getting to chat with you. I'm sure we could go
Always
on
good.
for a while.
Yes, for sure. Well, have a good rest of your day. I'll talk to you later.
You too. Bye.
Bye, everybody. Thanks for listening to the Financial Clarity Podcast. Be sure to check out the show notes to learn more about today's episode and click subscribe on your favorite podcast app.